She's back.
Hi everyone, and welcome to today's SCWW webinar presentation featuring Jeannie Loyacano, What a Query Means to Me. I'm Trilby Plants, President of South Carolina Writers Workshop. Today's webinar will be available on our YouTube channel, and I'll put the link to that channel at the end of the webinar. You can ask questions using the chat feature. At least one of us should be able to see them. Just type in your questions and click send. Okay, let's get started. Jenny Padgett will introduce today's presenter.
Hi everybody, I'm so excited that Jeannie's here with us. Let me introduce formally as Jeannie Loyacano. She's president of the Loyacano Literary Agency, and she considers herself a facilitator of dreams. She represents over 80 authors, and her forte is mystery, romance, thrillers, historical/military/southern fiction, and all quality fiction and nonfiction. Her passion is to see her authors succeed. I have a quote from Jeannie. There is nothing more rewarding than to hold one of my author's books and know I helped bring it to fruition. I am so blessed and privileged to be able to work with some of the most talented writers in the world. And on that wonderful note, I'm going to turn it over to Jeannie for the next hour.
Hi everybody, I'm Jeannie Loyacano. I have been an agent for over 8 years, and I started my own agency back in 2013. So it's been a while. I have over 80 authors who have 2 to 7 books, sometimes more. So it's never boring, and I have great submissions. And today I'm going to talk to you about submissions. One of the first steps to your submission after you have written your manuscript. One of the main things you look for after you've finished is polishing your manuscript. So after you've done that, you want to write a query, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. Some people aren't even sure what a query is, what it entails. So if you'll pay attention for just a few minutes, I'll give you some great things to think about. What a query means to me, first glance impressions of a query. In this session, I'll go over the structure, content, and composition of successful queries. Why is it important to make an excellent first impression? Why less is more and details mean the most? Now, first impressions can be personal, they can be on the phone, they can be through an email or a letter, but whatever you say, how you act, it comes across in words, in body language, in tone of voice. I've been told sometimes by my kids they don't like my tone of voice. Well, maybe they need to listen a little different. But when you're writing a query, it comes over in the words you use and how you put them down on the paper. There are 2 types of queries, standard post and email. I'm going to enhance that just a little bit by saying there are 2 more types of queries. There are fiction queries and there's non-fiction queries, because fiction queries is about a novel or short stories that you've written, and non-fiction can either be a memoir or a narrative nonfiction or an autobiography or a biography, or it could even be textbooks. So there are a little bit more than just 2. We consider standard post a little bit obsolete at this point because most publishers, editors, agents take submissions via email. It saves trees, it saves time, it saves energy, and it saves the postman a lot of headache. So when it comes to, I would say, submitting the manuscript via email, you want to make sure it's done correctly. You can always go to my website at www.loyacanoliteraryagency.com and go to submission guidelines, and it'll walk you through absolutely everything you need to know to do a submission. LLA likes to save all those things that everyone takes takes very important time, money, and the environment. And ink is very expensive if you're going to print out a manuscript. Sometimes manuscripts are 200, 300, 400 pages. That's a lot of ink and paper. And you don't want to waste your time doing that if you can just send it by email. I look for professionalism at all times, and that's in writing the query and making sure that the synopsis is formatted and done correctly, and making sure that the manuscript is done correctly. For us at LLA, we want the completed, polished manuscript, not the first 5 pages or the first 50 pages. We want the whole thing, and we don't take anything on commission. So if you say, I've got a great manuscript that I want to write, will you take it on? No. Write it and polish it and then submit it. If it's standard post, I get a few a year standard post. Just know that if it is standard post, I'm going to reply to that by email. I'm not going to send you anything back in the post. And if you do send me your manuscript, it's most likely going to get shredded, because I have to have everything on a Word doc on the computer in order to work on it and in order to submit it. And it can be very, very expensive to do that. I had a manuscript once that I actually did do the editing on the paper with a red pen, and I sent it back to him, and it was $50 to send it back. So figure if it cost me $50, it cost him $50, that's $100 when it doesn't cost anything to do an email submission. Okay, then I look at what's sent. The query should be crisp, concise, and to the point. The synopsis and manuscript formatted per the LLA submission guidelines. Most of the time, they send the first 3 chapters since it costs less. Well, that is if it's standard post. It doesn't cost any more to send a full manuscript via email attachment than it does the first 3 chapters of the first 50 pages. Some like to go overboard and send a 400-page manuscript. Very expensive, time-consuming. You just don't want to have to deal with that. Each query should have 3 sections, and these are very important. They should only be very short paragraphs, because as an agent or an editor, when you're looking at a query, it's going to be first impression, first of all, and then content. The first paragraph should be introduction, then a brief summary of what the book is about, and then a short bio. And I'm talking about your literary history, what you've written, where you've been published, whether it's magazines, newspapers, or you've had a short story included in a book like Chicken Soup for the Soul or something like that. Anything that you've done before, any books you've had published before, whether it was in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, it doesn't matter, but you've been a published author. Now, if you're self-published and it's a self-published book and you want me to take it on, that's quite different. So we'll get to that in just a minute. Whether it's snail or email, it should have all your contact information. And this is, if you're sending a query by regular mail, you're going to have it formatted different than if you have it done by email. If you do it by regular mail, you're going to have in the top left corner your contact information and the date across from that, and then below that the dear whoever, and then the first paragraph and so forth. In an email, you can actually go straight into dear so-and-so and have your contact information as your signature on your email. And you can set that up to do automatically with every email, or you can put it in just for that. I suggest you write a query template, and that way all you have to do is fill in the dear part, like Dear Mr. Smith, Dear Mr. Brown, that kind of thing. Okay. Depending on which route it took to get to me, it will be formatted different. Snail will be standard mail, and email will not be. Should always use Mr., Ms., or Mrs. Now, just to make sure that you're not stepping on anybody's toes, all men are Mr., but all women are not Mrs. or Miss. So I suggest using Ms. And that way you're not hurting anybody's feelings, whether they're married or not. And always use either their full name or Mr. Brown. Like if it's Mr. Lawrence Brown, you can do that. That's a little formal, but you can do that. But for females, sometimes it's best to use the full name. The first paragraph should tell me something like, attached is the synopsis in the first 3 chapters of John Brown's 80,000-word historical fiction, Jacob's Ladder, based on the life of Jacob, son of Israel in the Bible. That gives me a title, the word count, and the genre. Right off the bat, I know whether or not I can look at it or not. If it's something that I don't take on, and I know somebody else in my company will look at it, then I'll forward it to them. But if it's something that I might be interested in, like for instance, I like historical fiction, so I'll take a look at this. Next is the meat of the query. Tell me in 1 paragraph what the book is about, such as, following the fallout between Jacob and Esau, Jacob went away to begin a new life. He fell asleep with his head on a rock and had this dream. He was approached by angels who showed him wondrous things, and one of them was a ladder to heaven. This is the story of what he saw and how it changed his life. That gives me the gist of the book. It's like the book blurb that you would find on the back of the book. And sometimes I suggest that paragraph itself when I am, talking to the editors back and forth about your book, whether they use it on the back of the book or they use it for advertisement, or even if they use it on Amazon. A lot of the stuff that I've written is on Amazon. I say, I'm not a writer. I wrote that. So I'm still a writer. So I know this is an embellishment of the original story. If I'm interested in biblical historical fiction, I will continue to read. If not, it's a reject. But if I see potential in it, then I go on to the synopsis, and then I go on to the first chapter. Some people know how to write a really good query. Some people know how to do a synopsis, but they may not know how to write a novel. So you have to take all of that into consideration when you're seeing what's in front of you. So some may not be able to write a very good query. So you move on to the synopsis. The synopsis is so. But they are fantastic writers. They pull you into the book and they don't let you go into the last word, and you feel like you've fallen into the rabbit hole. That's what you want. You can work with that. You can't rewrite the whole book. If it's a really good book, you can rewrite the synopsis and you can fix the query. But that is the key to it. It's got to be well written. The last paragraph should be a short bio, not your resume or your family history. I am a lifetime writer. This is just an example. I'm not a lifetime writer. I'm an agent. I am a lifetime writer. I have a degree in language arts from the University of Georgia, write for the lifestyle section of the Atlanta Journal and Constitution, and have self-published 2 self-help books, Learning to Live on Your Own, Amazon 98, and How to Land Your First Job, Amazon 99. This is my first novel. See, that tells me that you have written things before, where you were published, and what year you were published. I've had clients send me manuscripts 2015. They haven't been published since 1973. So maybe they haven't done too much in the last 40 years. But they're good writers. So we're going to dust them off and we're going to get them published. Then at the very bottom, you always, this is what I tell all my authors, no matter what you do, you always leave a sweet smell when you leave the room. So at the end of your query, at the end of your conversations, at the end of your meeting, you always want that person to have a good impression of you and be able to talk well about you after you leave. So at the end of your query, you want to say, thank you for the review, or thank you for your review. I say the review. Sincerely, and then you have your signature. Now, if it's going to be printed out and put in the real mail, you'd want to put your handwritten signature on there as well. But if it's an email, you don't have to do that. Okay, wording is everything. I want you to grab my attention, make me want to look at the synopsis from that query. So wording of that second paragraph is very important. And you want to make sure you go over your work several times and have someone who can be critical of you and not get upset to look at it and make sure that it's all correct, that there are no misspelled words, that the sentences are correct, that kind of thing, and that it's formatted right. Make me want to ignore the phone and not do the laundry this weekend. There's nothing better than getting a manuscript that sets me on fire. Your enthusiasm is what gears my enthusiasm, which shows in how I shop your book. I do not take on just anything. I have to believe in it. Your success is my success. I don't just take on any manuscript. I have to see the potential in it. I have to see the market value in it. Who's going to buy it? How many are going to buy it? If it's a simple, I'll give you a good example. A very nice gentleman sent me his memoir of his family, where they came from, how they got to the United States, that kind of thing. Unless it is exceptionally written, it's not going to sell to anybody but his family members. So you have to make it universal. You have to touch many hearts, many different backgrounds, races, religions, and so forth, in order to appeal to them. So I can tell you, if it's well written, I'll take it on. First impressions. This is a good one right now because I'm doing this webinar and I can see myself. Picture yourself as an interviewer. Stand in front of the mirror and look at yourself. What do you see that you can improve on? What do you expect when the first applicant walks in the door? You want to make sure that they're well dressed, not necessarily with the designer clothes. I'm talking about just well dressed, not wrinkled, the shoes are shined, the hair's neat. The same thing goes when you do a query. You look at it and you make sure that it's formatted correctly, it's lined up, no misspelled words, that everything is there that is needed. And it's the same thing when you talk on the phone to someone. You want to make sure that you're speaking in correct English and that they understand you. I have gotten queries that demand shout, slur, does not know what spell check is, wants immediate responses or an email confirmation, tells me about his or her family and what their preferences are, or just says, see attachments. Yes, I have gotten those. Open up the email, and in the body of the email are 2 words, see attachments. That's not a query. If you want to impress me, tell me your story. Don't come in with your shirt untucked, scuffed shoes, garlic breath, or BS. Your query should be a firm handshake, polite salutation. Say only what needs to be said and nothing more. Be confident about yourself and your abilities. Wow me. And the key to all that is confidence. If you've got a well-written query, you've got a great synopsis, and your manuscript is about as perfect as it can be, then you're going to have confidence in yourself and in your abilities. And it's going to come across. Now, I'm not talking about being cocky, because when you do that, that's a turn off as well. So be confident and sure of what you have there. Less is more. The query should be 3 paragraphs, period. That's it. 1, 2, 3. Not 3 pages. 3 pages would be more like a synopsis and part of the book. I won't read it if it's any longer than that. Don't have the time. This is an elevator pitch writing. In other words, if you had 2 minutes to impress me on an elevator to get me to look at your manuscript, what would you say? Think about what would you do, what you would do if you and I both got on an elevator and had 1 floor to get your point across. You just pull your shoulders back, you take a deep breath, think about what you're going to say, and then you say it. The good thing about a query compared to an elevator pitch is that you are not put on the spot. You get to think it out, delete, write, show it to someone for proofing, spell check, and you get to keep it as a template. You do not have to do this over and over and over again. Save it to a file and just, pull it up, change the person's name in the letter, and send it out. Now, the only time that you would change more than that is if you had to customize it to specifications on the agency's websites. You are welcome to tweak or change it at any time if you do not think it's working. That is the benefit of doing a query and not a phone interview or meeting someone at a conference. Now, I do like to go to conferences. I love meeting new authors. I like meeting the editors and the publishers. I like meeting the people that put the conferences on because I'm always learning something new. Never say you know it all. I read that in my devotion this morning. Romans 12. Love it. So, we do not have to talk on the phone very much. We don't have time to talk on the phone. So when I'm talking on the phone, it's really quick because I've got to get back to work. Emails are very important because I can decipher the information. I can come up with good answers or information that I can send back, like links or web pages that might have things that can help people. Agents research, compose, make lists, construct submission packages, and submit. Then we have to read. And believe me, it takes me a good week, sometimes two, to get through a manuscript because I have to do it early in the morning or late in the evening. It's not something where I can just sit down and read all day. Because if I did that, then I would be putting all the other things that I have to do on the back burner. So it takes a while. And if I do take on a manuscript and I'm reading it, I edit as I go. So it takes me a lot longer than someone who's just reading a book. We read all the time. Some people go to work for 8 hours and can leave it there. We take hours everywhere we go. No matter where I go, I have my laptop and my phone. I must be accessible at all times. I have heard that I am a unique agent. I do a lot of things that other agents don't do because most agents don't have what I have as far as resources. And they're not their own boss either. So they have to do what their bosses tell them and how they have to do it for that agency. So I'm always open to suggestions and ideas from my authors. So it's always a learning experience. I line edit as I read a manuscript. If I'm interested enough to read it, I will not pass over an error or hesitate to make notes all over your manuscript. If I have any constructive criticism, you will get it. If I don't think it will sell, I will tell you. So the point I'm making is this: do not call agents to ask if they read it yet, because that's very bad form to hound your agents. Sometimes it takes 3 months, 6 months to get to your manuscript because of all the other things that have to be done. So we'll let you know. I mean, I know I will. I always follow up on every submission that I get. So you can always send something like every 12 weeks or so just to see, just to prompt. But don't call and don't hound. So we have cues. We put those submissions in that we want to read. I can tell you in about 60 seconds whether or not it is up my alley or not. If I ask for the complete manuscript, that's a good sign if you haven't already sent it, because we asked for the complete manuscript. Not hearing from an agent in 3 months may not be. After 3 months, check in with a short note. Sometimes this spurs action. Just don't hound the agents. And do not usurp your agent if your agent takes you on. In other words, don't go to any of the editors that you have on your list, because she may have already submitted to them. So if anyone has any questions about the query, I'll give a quick overview. A query should have 3 paragraphs. In the beginning, it should have attached is the submission for the title, the word count, and what the book is about. The second paragraph should have a short book blurb about the book, gives me the gist of the book. And the third paragraph should have the bio, and a very short bio, not a resume. So, does anyone have any questions?
I have one. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
How does one go about trying to find an agent to query?
Well, the internet's the best way. I know when I first started, I got a copy and I don't recommend doing this. It's Writer's Digest is a great book, but by the time the book comes out, half the book has changed. You can go online to Writer's Digest online and get more up-to-date information because they update that, I think, on a regular basis. But if you buy the book, for instance, if you bought Writer's Digest 2016 hard copy and you went through page after page after page, most of that's going to be changed because editors hop from house to house, agents leave and start different jobs. So I think Writer's Digest is great. Publishers Weekly is a great thing to get in your email every morning because it has up-to-date information about editors and agents and agencies and things like that. Also, you can just go into Google and put in your Google search engine, literary agencies. But then you have to find out who would take what, because some literary agencies only take nonfiction, some take only fiction, some only take children's books, so you have to see what they take.
So, following up with that question, once you found the website, you would follow their guidelines using your 3-paragraph technique, but you want to follow each agency's guidelines closely.
Everybody has a different way of doing things, but there is a standard, quote-unquote, way of doing a submission package, and that's what I have on my website. The submission guidelines on my website are standard, so you could send that to anybody and they would accept it as long as it's polished and error-free.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a feeling that people cannot get their questions asked. Do either Ginny or Jeannie see any questions in the chat feature?
Well, I see one from Bob Lackey. It says, what % of your time is involved with reading new queries? I read the queries as soon as I get them in my email. As soon as new emails pop up, I always check and see what it is and look at them by priority. But as soon as a query comes in, I check it out. If it's something that I'm interested in, I'll immediately email back the person who sent it and let them know that I'll take a look and get back with them. Sometimes it's that day, sometimes it's a couple of weeks. If it's something that I really like, I'll put it in my queue to read it. So, it just depends on, I guess, how interested in it I am.
I have another question. Once you decide to represent an author, once a book is sold, can you tell us how long it generally takes from selling to publishing?
Well, there is a process. I was just talking to Tilby about someone a while ago. I think you were in the conversation. She she wrote a manuscript 40 years ago. Her name is Dreama Berkheimer. Her book comes out in April. Last year when I took on Kathleen M. Rogers, I took on both of her books and sold them. One is Johnny Come Lately, the other one's The Final Salute, and the third one is going to come out in 2016 called Seven Wings to Glory. She called me and she wanted to meet with me, and while we were meeting and having a snack, she said, I have to tell you about Dreama Berkheimer's book. She said, Dreama's been working on this thing for 40 years, and she's just afraid to submit it. It took Dreama a year to submit it to me after that. I got the submission, I think, in February. 2 weeks later, I immediately read it because it was so fabulous. And, I was talking about memoirs, how sometimes it's just for family to read and sometimes it's for everybody. Hers is a memoir about her growing up in West Virginia. And it's like the Waltons. It's just fabulous writing. One of the quotes on it is, Grandma always told me not to go running on that Red Dog Road, but I always do. Now you can see how spunky she is in that. But it took her a whole year to submit it to me after she talked to me on the phone that day. And then it only took 2 weeks after I finished reading it, did the submission package, and submitted it to sell it to HarperCollins Zondervan. So that was like a miracle. It took her 40 years to get up the nerve to actually submit it, and then it sells right away. That's phenomenal. So sometimes it doesn't take very long at all from the time that the query is submitted and the manuscript is read to get sold, and sometimes it takes many years. I have one that just sold this year, and I've been trying to sell it since 2010. It's 5 years I've been working on trying to sell this book, and it is fabulous. It's called By Accident of Birth by Thomas E. Simmons, and it's based on a true story about the Bullet Baby in Vicksburg in 1863, and she grows up to do all kinds of exciting things. She's just a fabulous gal. Her name's B.B. Quinn, by the way. You can tell I can get a little excited about my books. They're like my little surrogate children. I love my books.
But then after you,
Afterwards,
yeah, how long does it take to be published after you sell it?
well, most contracts will say it will be published within 12 to 18 months. Some books come out 3 to 5 months later, depending on how much work is needed for the book. If it's a well-polished book like Dreama's book, oh, it was fabulous. They didn't have to do hardly anything to it. Same thing with Tom Simmons' book. After a publisher got a hold to it and really liked it, they realized that it was already polished. They didn't have to do much editing at all. After the book is taken on by the publisher, like I said, there is a time that they give for the book to be published. And then after the book comes out, of course, there's all different sites that it's put on and is available. So it never stops. It's a continuing process. It has a life of its own. So after the book comes out, you've got press releases, you've got book signings, you've got conferences, interviews with newspapers, bloggers, you name it. It's just a never-ending process, and you have to do a lot of that yourself as the author. It's not done for you anymore. Like in the old days when a book was taken on, a publicist was assigned to you and they carted you around the country and you went from book signing to book signing. They no longer do that. You have to do a lot of it on your own. If you're with a big house, they will plug your book into certain areas, but they will not pay for a lot of the travel or the accommodations or anything like that. So that's where you as conference people come in and you help authors get their books out.
Ginny, would you go over the kinds of books that you take on again?
The types of books?
Yeah.
I'll take on just about anything that's well written. I have not taken on any poetry or erotica. I've taken on nonfiction, fiction, southern fiction, military, lot of different kinds of books. You can look on the website and see what types of books I do take on. But I just have not taken on those two types.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any other questions?
I don't see any other questions on the queue. But I would like to elaborate a little bit on what Jenny said about after. For my authors, I think this is one of the reasons why anyone would say that I was a unique agent, is I have a vast amount of information called author promo info, and it's upwards of 500 different documents that cover conferences, book signings, bookstores, book clubs, newspapers, libraries, bloggers, helpful sites. And I send this to my authors who have been acquired by a publisher, and that way they can make lists of things that apply to them. It might not apply to you if you are doing a nonfiction or if it's a children's book. So you would make a list for you that would apply to you. Save everything because you might need it in the future. But make lists and then prioritize those lists. I also tell them, look for things within 100 miles of where you live first. Offer to do the ones locally in your region, in your area, for free. Like if they wanted to do something at the library or do a book signing or do a conference. Do that for free if it's in your immediate area and it's not going to cost you anything to go over there and do it. If it's something beyond that, where you have to drive a couple hundred miles and you can turn around and come back that evening, then you would probably only charge a stipend. But if it's going to be something where you have to fly or drive for 5-6 hours or something like that, and you have accommodations, then you would want to ask for all expenses paid, because you wouldn't ask for a stipend upon that if you're not a very popular author. Now, if you were Diana Gobaldone, who I adore, I think she's just marvelous. I got to spend a whole day with her. She wrote the Outlander series. She is just an amazing woman. She can charge a very large stipend to come and do a conference, and you have to pay all of her expenses. But you know what? When you're a very popular author, you're going to be a draw. You're going to bring people into your conference. Now, if you're an unknown, this is your first novel, but you've done a lot of marketing and promotion for your book, and your book's got a lot of reviews, and it's just fabulous, you're still going to be a draw. But since you're an unknown, you wouldn't want to have to charge anybody anything to do the conference. See, it's about building your reputation and building your book, selling more books, and marketing and promotion. And remember, always leave a sweet smell in your wake.
Well, I have a comment. I want to thank you for all of us writers out here that are not published yet. We think of agents as really scary. They hold the key to our success of being published. And I want to thank you for being so accessible and taking some of the scariness out. I may be able to go forward. I have sometimes feel a little paralyzed to move forward with my own writing, and you've helped me feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. I'm looking forward to reading your manuscript when it's done.
I'd like to repeat that and thank you so much for your time. You made it seem so much easier, and I love what you said at the beginning, that something about you're the keeper of authors' dreams.
Yeah, I consider myself a facilitator of dreams. Like, for instance, in Dreama's case, I love her name, by the way. She says it's common in West Virginia, but I just think it's just gorgeous. In Dreama's case, she didn't think it was good enough. And I saw the potential in it, and I took that ball and I ran with it. And I did a lot of heavy praying. I said, God, please let me sell this big, because it needs to be with a great big house. It's just fabulous. And lo and behold, it's now with HarperCollins, and it comes out in April. You can see it on Amazon now. You can pre-order it on Amazon. But it's like taking someone's... This is another way you can look at it. You are a mom, and your book is your baby. It was conceived in your mind, and you put it down on paper or on the computer, and now you're wanting to hand it off to someone, like for pre-K. That's what I'm kind of sort of, the pre-K or the kindergarten. You hand it off to me, and you've got to kind of cut that umbilical cord a little bit. That's still your baby. But when I get it, I teach that baby a few things. I tweak it, I polish it, I get it ready for first grade. First grade is submissions. So when I hand it off to an editor and I say, this is a really great book, you got to read it. You just got to take a look at it. You'll know. From the first word on, it's fabulous. When they hear that and they look at it and they see there are no errors, that it's well written, that it's polished, and that the person knows what they're doing, they're going to take a look at it. And most of the time they do take it on if it's really, really good. So it's like handing off your baby. I understand completely how it feels because I kind of feel the same way when a book sells.
Well, thank you very much for being with us today, Jeannie. I don't see any more questions on my end.
Oh, wait a minute. Joanne Kelly? Uh,
Yes.
Joanne Kelly's on here. She said, just want to say thank you so much for taking the time to share this information. I'm madly scribbling notes. Always helps to have insight from a professional. And then Bob Lackey said, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. Thank you guys for dropping in and writing notes. Just so you know, you don't have to take a whole lot of notes. You can go on my website and get the same information from my submission guidelines link. It's all written out there, really simple. Now, on the website, there are links for everything. So there's going to be a link that's titled What a Query Means to Me, and you click on that link. Then there's going to be another one for synopsis and manuscripts, and it'll give you examples of what we look for and how to do it. So I'm trying to walk you through it, so when you do submit it to me, it won't need a lot of work.
Thank you again, Jeannie. And I will send an email to all the attendees with the link to our YouTube channel so that people that got in late can watch the beginning of it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.